Rude people are everywhere. The man who cuts in line without apology, the colleague who dismisses your ideas with a smirk, the stranger who shouts from behind the wheel. They arrive suddenly, disrupting the calm of the day. Their words or actions land like small stones thrown at glass. Not enough to break you, but enough to leave cracks if you let them. The first reaction is to focus on ourselves, the sting, the humiliation, the anger rising in our chest. But the Stoic perspective shifts the lens. Look not at your wound, but at the source. Why do people act rudely in the first place? Often it is not strength, but weakness. A rude person reveals their lack of self-mastery. Their impatience, their arrogance, their bitterness overflow because they cannot govern themselves. What looks like an attack on you is usually a mirror of them. Think about the office bully who interrupts others. His words are not born from confidence, but from insecurity. He speaks loudly because silence threatens him. Or the stranger who insults online. Behind the mask of a screen, they reveal frustration that has nothing to do with you. Even in families, rudeness is often the spillover of stress. A parent's fatigue, a sibling's envy, a partner's disappointment. To meet their sharpness with your own only multiplies weakness. Rude people want control. Sometimes they want attention, sometimes dominance, sometimes validation. If you react as they hope, with anger or defensiveness, you hand them victory. Marcus Aurelius would remind us, they do not control your mind. Only you can give them that power. To become disturbed is to surrender sovereignty. To remain calm is to expose their impotence. Notice how rudeness seeks to hook into pride. The cutting remark at work lingers because it scratches vanity. The sarcastic laugh in a meeting burns because we crave recognition. Yet the rude person depends on your cooperation. Without your assent, their gesture is empty. Imagine an insult thrown into an empty room. It echoes for no one. That is how you can meet rudeness, as if your mind were such a room, unwilling to echo what does not deserve to stay. Still, Stoicism does not deny reality. The rude person exists. Their behavior disrupts. The task is not to pretend otherwise, but to interpret it rightly. Marcus taught himself daily to expect arrogance, selfishness, and ignorance. By expecting it, he was not surprised. By not being surprised, he was not wounded. Preparation is a shield sharper than denial. So when rudeness comes, remember, it is their weakness displayed, not your dignity diminished. Their lack of discipline, not your failure. Their outburst is a signal of disorder in them, not a verdict on you. To respond with anger makes you like them. To respond with calm makes you master of yourself. This sets the stage for a deeper inquiry. If rudeness reflects weakness in others, what is the root of that weakness? And how can we guard against allowing it to become weakness in ourselves? These questions move us from description to understanding, from seeing the rude person as an annoyance to seeing them as a lesson. Why do rude people disturb us so much? The sting rarely comes from the words themselves, but from the meaning we attach to them. Someone interrupts us, and we feel disrespected. Someone insults us, and we feel diminished. Someone ignores us, and we feel invisible. Rudeness touches the ego, not the body. It cuts into our sense of worth, even though the physical world remains unchanged. The root lies in our assumptions. We assume others should treat us with fairness, with recognition, with respect. When that assumption is violated, frustration follows. But this assumption itself is fragile, because it depends on people we cannot control. Each time we build our peace on external behavior, we gamble with forces outside our hands. The Stoic would warn, expectations chained to others will always lead to disappointment. Rudeness also exposes our own insecurity. If an insult did not find a sensitive spot, it would pass like wind through an open window. But it hooks into pride, into fear of rejection, into the desire to be seen as competent, worthy, or admirable. The rude comment doesn't just come from the outside, it awakens something inside. That inner wound is where the disturbance grows. A strong mind can let the insult go. A fragile mind clings to it, replaying it until it multiplies pain. There is also the social layer. Modern life magnifies rudeness in ways Marcus Aurelius never had to witness, yet his guidance still applies. In digital spaces, anonymity emboldens cruelty. People write what they would never say face to face, and the distance makes their harshness colder. In workplaces, driven by competition, respect is often sacrificed for status, and colleagues cut each other down to rise faster. Even within families, stress turns into sharp words, spoken not because of hatred, but because fatigue loosens self-control. The environment creates endless opportunities for rudeness, and we carry the wounds home with us. Yet here lies the paradox. The core problem is not the rude person, it is our untrained response. If an insult had no power over us, it would vanish as quickly as it arrived. But our reaction, the flare of pride, the defensive thought, the inward argument, gives it life. We meet rudeness with expectation, ego, and reaction. In doing so, we hand over our peace to someone who may not even know us. This is the ground where philosophy must work. Stoicism does not claim to change rude people. It claims to change how we receive them. The Stoic lens reminds us that external behavior is beyond control, but judgment is within it. To say, "This word harms me," is a choice. To say instead, "This is only sound, only opinion, only weakness revealed," is another choice. One choice imprisons us, the other frees us. Habeas Your. If the problem were only out there, there would be no solution. We cannot eliminate arrogance from humanity. We cannot silence every insult, every careless remark. But because the problem is also in here, in the mind, there is hope. The battlefield is not the rude person's mouth, but our own response. To recognize this is to shift from victim to agent. We stop asking, "Why are they rude?" and begin asking, "Why does this disturb me?" The answer points inward. It reveals attachments we must loosen and habits we must retrain. This inward turn is not weakness, it is discipline. Marcus Aurelius himself would urge us to prepare the mind each morning, to expect rudeness, to meet it without surprise, and to remember that only our judgment grants it power. From here, the inquiry deepens. If our disturbance lies within, what practices strengthen the mind against it? And how can the philosophy of Stoicism turn daily encounters with rude people into opportunities for growth rather than seeds of resentment? Those questions guide the next step in our exploration. Imagine Marcus Aurelius living now, in our offices, in our homes, on our phones. How would he meet rude people without being bothered? He would begin with preparation. In Meditations, he wrote that each morning we should remind ourselves that we will meet people who are meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, surly. He would wait with the expectation of rudeness, not the surprise of it. When you expect the behavior, you do not feel ambushed by it. The insult no longer arrives as a shock, but as something already accounted for. At work, if a colleague interrupts with arrogance, Marcus would pause inwardly. He would see the interruption as their problem, a failure of discipline on their part, not a theft of his dignity. He would continue his task, anchored in purpose. The rude word would dissolve against the wall of his reason. Instead of wasting energy on resentment, he would conserve his strength for what truly matters: the work itself, the service, the duty at hand. On social media, if faced with an insult, Marcus would not chase the comment thread. He would recognize it as mere letters on a screen, an opinion, not a truth. His mind would separate the fact, "These words were written," from the judgment, "These words hurt me." By stripping away the judgment, the insult loses its sting. He would remind himself that digital noise cannot touch the core of character unless the mind consents to be disturbed. In family conflict, when a sharp word is spoken at the dinner table, Marcus would return to self-command. He would remember that anger adds nothing while patience preserves peace. He would not let one rude sentence poison an entire evening. His response would not be weakness, but mastery, a choice to keep harmony where others have lost it. He would hold to his own standard instead of being pulled into another's lack of control. Importantly, Marcus would not retreat into coldness. Stoicism is not about withdrawing from human bonds. He would still engage, still listen, still speak when needed, but he would engage with a guarded mind, one that filters impressions before granting them power. He would remind himself, what they do is outside my control. What I think, say, or do is entirely within it. The rude person remains what they are, but Marcus remains free. He does not require the world to be polite before he can be at peace. His calm is portable, carried into meetings, onto trains, into the glow of a phone screen. The second is uncomfortable, an input from another. I read a lot. PC only works when I read. If rudeness persists, Marcus would turn it into practice. Each insult becomes a weight for training patience. Each interruption becomes an exercise in self-possession. Each careless gesture becomes a test of clarity. Just as the athlete strengthens by lifting resistance, the Stoic strengthens by facing daily trials of character. This approach is neither naive nor soft. It is disciplined. It recognizes that fighting every rude person wastes life. Time spent in argument is time lost to growth. Marcus would measure value carefully. If the encounter does not serve virtue, it deserves no hold on the mind. From this example, the lesson becomes clear. To face rudeness the Stoic way is to expect it, to interpret it rightly, and to respond from reason rather than reflex. It is not about changing others, but governing oneself. And so we are led to the next question. What principles make this possible? What framework allows a person to remain calm while the world around them grows careless or cruel? To answer that, we must turn from practice to principle and examine the foundations of Stoic thought itself. Why does this approach work? Because it rests on Stoic principles that do not bend with circumstance. Without guiding principles, our responses are ruled by impulse. Pride rises, anger follows, peace is lost. With principles, the mind stands firm. Marcus Aurelius lived among arrogance and insult, yet his words endure because he trained himself not to rely on others for composure, but to rely on reason. The first principle is the simple distinction between what is ours and what is not. Rude behavior is not ours to command. It belongs to the other person. What belongs to us is our judgment and our response. When we try to master what lies beyond our reach, we lose twice. Once in the sting of the insult, and once in the agitation that follows. When we govern what is within our reach, we win once, we preserve our composure. This distinction, what the Stoics called the dichotomy of control, is the anchor. Without it, we drift with every harsh word. With it, we remain steady, like a ship tied safely in harbor. The second principle is the indifference of words themselves. Words are not wounds unless the mind agrees to treat them as wounds. They are vibrations in the air, fleeting pixels on a screen, passing noises. We hear thousands of words each day, and most pass without notice. Why should one phrase, spoken sharply in our direction, carry such weight? Because we grant it meaning. The Stoic practice is to pause and see words as they are, nothing more than sounds. When stripped of judgment, they lose their sting. This is why Marcus could write that it is not things themselves that trouble us, but the opinions we form about them. A third principle is the recognition of human nature. Marcus reminded himself daily that people act out of ignorance, fear, or pain. Their rudeness is rarely about us, it is about them. The colleague who interrupts may fear being overlooked. The stranger who insults online may be carrying bitterness from elsewhere. The family member who speaks harshly may be weighed down by stress. To be angry at them is to be angry at human weakness itself. A wiser course is to see their behavior as evidence of struggle, not as proof of their power. This perspective allows compassion to replace outrage. Not indulgence, but understanding. The fourth principle is the discipline of assent. Every impression knocks at the door of the mind, demanding entry. An insult arrives and whispers, "This hurts you." The untrained mind opens the door immediately, letting the impression take root. The trained mind pauses and asks, "Must I believe this? Does this judgment serve me?" In that pause lies freedom. Marcus would picture the insult as an unworthy messenger at the gate of the mind's fortress. The gatekeeper has a choice: allow entry or refuse. Most insults are best left outside, unable to disturb the inner chamber. The fifth principle is the call to virtue. Stoicism is not merely about endurance, but about excellence. The response to rudeness is not silence alone. Sometimes silence is fitting, but sometimes clarity must be spoken, and sometimes firmness is required. The point is not passivity, but reasoned choice. Patience, kindness, clarity, firmness, all are tools available to the one who governs himself. The rude person, without intending it, offers the Stoic a stage to practice these virtues. What could have been a moment of irritation becomes a chance to embody strength of character. When seen through these principles, rudeness takes on a different shape. It is no longer an attack, but a test. It ceases to be a problem and becomes a practice ground. Every insult is an invitation to apply discipline. Every interruption is a reminder to remain anchored. Every careless gesture is a chance to strengthen virtue. What others mean for harm becomes material for growth. This reframing is the heart of Stoicism. It does not promise a world free of insult. It promises a self free of disturbance. Marcus Aurelius never asked that people be better before he could be calm. He asked only that he master himself, and in that mastery, the rude person loses power. They cannot shake what they cannot touch. From here, the natural question arises: if these principles reshape our view of rudeness, how can we turn them into daily habits? Knowing is one step. Living them when anger stirs is another. To explore this, we must move from theory into practice, drawing lessons that guide us through ordinary encounters with rude people in today's world. From Marcus' example, several lessons emerge. They are simple in form, but demanding in practice. Each lesson is a tool for the mind to be carried into ordinary encounters where pride and anger would otherwise rule. The first is to expect rudeness. Each morning, prepare your mind. The world is full of people, and some will be careless, arrogant, or cruel. If you hope to meet only kindness, you will be wounded again and again. But if you begin the day with expectation, surprise vanishes. Marcus urged himself to remember that meddling, ungrateful, and surly people would surely appear. By preparing in advance, the sting loses its edge. What is expected cannot ambush you. The second lesson is to detach ego from insult. If words hurt, ask yourself, what part of me is being struck? Is it pride, insecurity, or vanity? An insult cannot wound the body, but it can awaken hidden weakness in the soul. That is where work is needed. Instead of directing energy outward in retaliation, direct it inward in examination. The insult becomes a mirror, reflecting attachments you may not have noticed. By addressing the wound within, you remove the power of words without. The third lesson is to pause before response. The first reaction is rarely the best one. Insults ignite impulses, the urge to shout, to defend, to prove. But a pause, however brief, creates space for reason. In that space, you remember that silence is an option, that dignity is stronger than impulse. Marcus practiced this pause as a discipline, teaching himself that no external event requires an immediate reaction. The rude person demands speed. The Stoic responds with calm delay. The fourth lesson is to see the other person's struggle. Their rudeness reflects their condition, not your worth. An arrogant colleague may be driven by fear of being overlooked. A harsh comment from a family member may come from fatigue rather than malice. A stranger's insult online may flow from frustration that has nothing to do with you. To recognize this is not to excuse behavior, but to understand it. Compassion begins where anger ends. To pity the offender, rather than hate them, is to remain free from their weakness. The fifth lesson is to turn rudeness into training. Each rude encounter is a gym for the mind. You do not resent the weights in the gym, you use them to grow stronger. In the same way, every insult, interruption, or slight becomes resistance to build discipline. The rude person becomes an unwitting trainer. What could have been a moment of injury becomes a moment of growth. This reframing transforms annoyance into opportunity, and no encounter is wasted. These lessons are not abstract. They can be applied in offices, where meetings are cut by interruptions. They can be applied on commutes, where impatience fills the air. They can be applied at home, where sharp words test patience. They can be applied online, where cruelty hides behind screens. Wherever there are people, there will be rudeness. And wherever there is rudeness, there is opportunity to practice philosophy in action. To live this way requires vigilance. Expectation must be renewed each morning. Ego must be checked each time pride rises. The pause must be chosen again and again. Compassion must be remembered when anger tempts, and training must be embraced even when the weight feels heavy. This repetition is the essence of discipline. Philosophy is not won in a single decision, but in 1,000 small moments where choice is tested. These lessons also remind us of the purpose of Stoicism. It is not to escape life, but to live it with strength. The rude person does not disappear. The insults do not cease. What changes is our relationship to them. We are no longer dragged into every quarrel. We are no longer prisoners of other people's moods. Instead, we govern ourselves, and in that governance lies freedom. From here, the path becomes clearer. If rudeness is a training ground, then each day supplies practice. The next question is how to apply these lessons consistently, not as occasional insights, but as habits woven into daily living. To answer that, we must turn to the practical applications of Stoicism in the modern world, where constant noise and conflict demand steady minds. Modern society magnifies irritation. Technology multiplies voices. Traffic multiplies impatience. Workplaces multiply stress. The rude encounter is no longer rare, it is daily. If we cannot manage it, we are dragged into constant turmoil, tossed back and forth by every careless word and thoughtless gesture. A person without discipline becomes a prisoner of their environment, reacting endlessly instead of living deliberately. Stoicism is not escape but armor. It does not silence rude people, but it silences their hold over us. It does not remove noise from the world, but it creates a quiet place within. It offers not withdrawal, but mastery. To practice Stoicism is to carry an inner shield, ready for the blows of arrogance, impatience, and cruelty. In offices, Stoicism prevents escalation. A rude email is answered with clarity, not venom. The professional trained in Stoicism does not allow one careless sentence to turn into a week-long feud. Instead, reason sorts the matter quickly, allowing energy to return to the real work. In families, Stoicism interrupts the spiral of conflict. A rude remark does not turn dinner into war. Because one person chooses patience over pride, the chain of reaction breaks and peace is preserved. On social media, Stoicism is perhaps more vital than anywhere else. 1,000 comments arrive, some thoughtful, many careless, a few cruel. Without discipline, each one threatens to capture attention and disturb sleep. With Stoicism, the trained mind treats them as passing shadows. A single insult cannot control a mind that has learned to separate fact from judgment. The screen glows, the words appear, but the mind remains free. Why is Stoicism the right path for today? Because it is realistic. It does not demand that people around us suddenly become virtuous. It demands only that we take responsibility for ourselves. That expectation is sustainable because it rests on what is possible, our own thoughts, choices, and actions. Stoicism can be practiced daily, in small moments, without ritual or ceremony. It requires no temple, no public recognition. The practice happens in the silence between insult and response, in the pause before anger rises, in the choice to value reason over impulse. It is also liberating. Most people live as prisoners of the moods of others. They are lifted when praised, crushed when insulted, restless when ignored. Stoicism frees us from this dependence. It teaches that dignity does not depend on applause and worth does not depend on recognition. Once this lesson is internalized, rude people lose their power. They may continue to act as they wish, but their words no longer reach the inner citadel. Marcus Aurelius' wisdom is not ancient dust. It is living guidance for an age of noise. His reminders were written in solitude, but they were meant for the noise of crowds, the pressure of politics, the daily friction of human dealings. When he wrote that we should expect arrogance, envy, and dishonesty, he was not describing a distant past. He was describing the present as well. The same challenges remain, only magnified by technology and multiplied by scale. Consider how quickly irritation spreads today. One careless comment in a meeting can echo through email chains. One rude post online can reach thousands within minutes. The speed of modern communication multiplies opportunities for disturbance. Without discipline, we become exhausted. With Stoicism, we can remain steady even as the pace quickens. This is why Stoicism is not outdated. It is more necessary now than ever. The world has not grown calmer. It has grown louder. The task is not to quiet the world, but to strengthen the mind. Stoicism offers that strength, tested over centuries, practical in every age. And so the point becomes clear. Rudeness is not a new problem. It is the same human weakness expressed through new channels. The Stoic response is unchanged. Prepare the mind, govern your judgments, and practice virtue. In doing so, you carry peace into a restless age. From here, one final question remains. What happens if we live this way consistently? What value is gained by carrying Stoic discipline into every rude encounter? The answer lies in the conclusion, where the fruits of this practice are gathered and where the call to live as Marcus lived becomes urgent for us today. To live like Marcus Aurelius is not to be untouched by life, but to remain untangled by it. Rude people will always exist. Their words may cut, but only if we let them. The Stoic way is to expect them, to understand them, and to master ourselves in response to them. The goal is not to escape conflict, but to move through it without surrendering peace. This is the value of Stoicism. It returns control to the only place it belongs, the mind. It teaches us to separate fact from judgment, insult from truth, noise from meaning. It shows us that disturbance comes not from the act itself, but from the story we attach to it. When the story changes, the sting fades. When judgment is withheld, the insult dissolves. Stoicism calls us to virtue even in the face of disrespect, reminding us that calm is stronger than anger, and mastery is deeper than retaliation. When you live this way, you no longer fear rude people. You expect them, and expectation shields you. You interpret them, and understanding weakens their grip. You respond with reason, and mastery restores your freedom. They become opportunities to practice patience, to test discipline, to embody calm. A sharp remark becomes a training ground for endurance. An interruption becomes a test of composure. Even hostility becomes a chance to prove that your character is not at the mercy of another's mood. The shift is profound. You walk through the world untouched, not because the world is gentle, but because your mind is strong. The noise remains, but it does not reach the inner citadel. The insults arrive, but they do not dictate your worth. The people remain flawed, but you remain steady. This is the power Marcus practiced, and it is available to us as well. And so the final call is this: do not let rudeness govern your life. Train your mind, as Marcus did. Anchor in reason, as the Stoics did. Live free, not by controlling others, but by mastering yourself. This mastery is not achieved in grand moments, but in the small, daily encounters that tempt you to lose patience. Each choice to pause, to understand, to remain calm is another stone in the foundation of freedom. For those who follow Sophoria, let this be your invitation. Subscribe, reflect, and share. Together, let us bring Stoic clarity into a noisy world. Let us practice the freedom Marcus Aurelius lived, a freedom that does not depend on silence from others but on strength within ourselves. The world will not grow quieter, but your mind can grow stronger, and in that strength, you will discover the calm that cannot be taken away.